The lecture hall was cold, but not as cold as the planet displayed on the massive screen behind Professor Velthar. The alien professor stood on 4 crystalline legs, his body shimmering like living glass under the station lights. He pointed, one of his thin arms at the frozen world rotating slowly on the display. Creo 7, he announced to his class of mixed-species students. This planet represents the absolute limit of colonization possibility, perhaps beyond that limit. Jiho sat in the back row, watching carefully. The young human engineer had his data pad open, taking notes like always. Next to him, Ha-Yun leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. She looked bored, but Jiho knew better. She was always paying attention. On his other side, Taimin was already analyzing something on his scanner, probably running biological simulations. The 3 humans were the only ones of their kind in this class. Most students were from species that had been traveling space for thousands of years. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, barely 200 years into space exploration. Professor Velthar continued his lecture. The surface temperature during night cycle reaches -150 degrees Celsius. The atmospheric pressure is 3 times your standard level. Methane ice storms move at speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. These storms can tear through reinforced metal like paper. A Quintari student in the front row raised a tentacle. Professor, surely with modern habitat technology, we could establish a research station. We tried, Velthar replied. His voice carried a tone that might have been sadness. 17 years ago, my own people built a station there. It lasted 8 months before we abandoned it. The planet is simply too hostile. He turned to look directly at the human students. Especially for species like humans, warm-blooded, thin-skinned from a temperate world. A human would freeze solid in less than 3 minutes of exposure. Even with thermal suits, survival time would be perhaps 30 minutes at most. Ha-Un's jaw tightened. Jiho noticed and put a hand on her arm. She had a habit of speaking up when aliens underestimated humans. The lecture continued for another hour. Professor Velthar explained how different species had tried and failed to colonize Creo 7. Each attempt had taught them something new about the planet's dangers. By the end, his message was clear. Some places in the universe were not meant for living beings. As the class ended, students filed out of the hall. Jiho, Ha-Yun, and Taimin gathered their things slowly, discussing the lecture in Korean. He really thinks we're that fragile, Ha-Yun muttered. Compared to most species here, we kind of are, Taimin replied. Our temperature tolerance range is actually pretty narrow. But our adaptability isn't, Jiho said. That's what they never factor in. They walked toward the station's central hub, where most students grabbed food between classes. The Galactic Academy station was enormous, home to over 50,000 beings from hundreds of worlds. It orbited Creo 7, using the planet as a teaching example of extreme environments. The central hub's screens suddenly flashed red. An emergency alert tone echoed through the space. Everyone stopped moving. The screen showed a distress signal origin point, Creo 7's surface. Professor Velthar's voice came over the station speakers. Attention all personnel. We have received an emergency transmission from Research Outpost Delta 7 on Creo 7. The station has suffered catastrophic environmental system failure. 4 Quintari researchers are trapped inside. Their life support will fail in approximately 48 hours. Jiho felt his stomach drop. 4 people were dying down there. The professor continued. We are coordinating with Galactic Rescue Services. However, a solar storm is currently preventing any orbital rescue operations. The storm will clear in 48 hours, but the survivors do not have that long. They must evacuate to backup facility Epsilon, located 50 kilometers from their current position. 50 kilometers across that frozen hell, Jiho thought. Impossible. The problem, Velthar's voice sounded strained, is that their current shelter is damaged. They cannot survive the journey. We are exploring all options. Within 20 minutes, an emergency council meeting was called. Jiho, Ha-Yun, and Taimin found themselves watching the proceedings on a public screen. Representatives from various species debated possible rescue methods. Each idea was shot down. Send a ground vehicle? The methane storms would destroy it. Send a rescue team? They would freeze before reaching the outpost. Professor Velthar stood before the council. I must be clear. This mission would be suicide for any rescue team. The planet's night cycle begins in 18 hours. Surface temperatures will become absolutely lethal. Even our most cold-resistant species cannot survive those conditions for the time required. So we do nothing? A council member asked. We wait for the solar storm to pass, then we retrieve the bodies, Velthar said quietly. I see no other option. Han grabbed Jiho's arm. We have to do something. What can we do? Taemin asked, but his eyes already showed he was thinking the same thing. We volunteer, Hyan said simply. They'll never let us, Jiho replied. Velthar just spent an hour explaining why humans would die fastest on that planet. Then we convince them otherwise, Han said. She was already walking toward the council chambers. The next hour was intense. The three humans had to get special permission just to enter the council meeting. When they finally stood before the HFY representatives, Professor Velthar looked at them with something like pity. You wish to volunteer for the rescue mission, he stated. It was not a question. Yes, Professor, Jiho said. No, Velthar replied immediately. I will not send students to their deaths, especially not humans. You heard my lecture. Your species is particularly vulnerable to these conditions. We heard it, Hatun said. We disagree. You disagree with physics? Velthar's crystalline body flickered with what might have been amusement or frustration. We disagree with your conclusions about human limitations, Taemin said. He stepped forward with his datapad. Professor, humans evolved on a planet with extreme seasonal variations. Our ancestors survived ice ages with nothing but animal skins and fire. We have biological and cultural adaptations you haven't accounted for. Such as? Velthar challenged. Let us show you, Hatun said. If we can't prove we have a chance of survival in your simulations, we won't go. The professor looked at them for a long moment. Very well. You have 2 hours to convince me. But understand this. I will not lower my standards. If I believe you will die, you will not go. The three humans left the chamber and headed for the environmental simulation lab. They had 2 hours to prove that everything the aliens believed about human fragility was wrong. 4. Quintari lives depended on it, and somewhere in the back of Jiho's mind, a small voice whispered that this was humanity's chance to show the galaxy what they were really capable of. Not with superior technology or physical strength, but with something else entirely. Something the aliens had not yet learned to measure. The simulation lab felt like stepping into Cryo 7 itself. Hyun watched as the temperature reading dropped to negative 80 degrees Celsius. The thermal suit wrapped around her body was standard rescue gear, rated for cold worlds but not extreme ones. It was already struggling. Professor Velthar observed from behind protective glass along with several council members. They had come to witness what they clearly expected to be a failed demonstration. Begin the test. Velthar's voice echoed through the chamber speakers. Jiho checked the timer on his wrist display. They needed to survive 30 minutes in these conditions to prove basic viability. After that, they would need to demonstrate mobility and problem-solving capability. The real conditions on Cryo 7 would be even worse, but this was the starting point. Taemin stood with his eyes closed, breathing in a specific pattern. Long deep breaths followed by brief holds. Hyun recognized the technique immediately. They had all trained for this. What is he doing? Velthar asked. Breathing exercise, Jiho replied through his comm link. Old technique from Earth. It helps the body adapt to cold stress. Folklore is not science, Velthar said dismissively. Watch his thermal output, Hyun suggested. On the monitors outside the chamber, Taemin's core temperature showed a slight increase. His body was generating more heat through controlled breathing. It was not much, but it was measurable. Interesting, one of the council members murmured. 10 minutes passed. The humans moved around the chamber, demonstrating that they could still function. They performed simple tasks, lifting equipment, operating tools, solving basic puzzles. Their movements were slower than normal, but they remained capable. Heart rates are elevated, Velthar observed. They are stressed. But functional, Hayun countered. Professor, most species try to resist the cold. Humans learn to work with it. At 15 minutes, Jiho initiated the next phase. He had brought several tools into the chamber, including a plasma cutter and building materials. Now he began constructing something. What are you building? Velthar asked. Emergency shelter, Jiho replied. His fingers were clumsy in the cold, but he continued working. We won't have fancy equipment on the surface. We need to prove we can create protection from available materials. He was building a small dome structure from ice blocks. Not real ice in this simulation, but synthetic materials that mimicked ice properties. The design was simple but clever. A double wall with an air gap between for insulation. An igloo, Taman explained. Indigenous people in Earth's Arctic regions use these for thousands of years. They work. Primitive, Velthar said. Effective, Hayun corrected. Sometimes the old ways exist because they work better than complicated solutions. 25 minutes into the test, Hayun demonstrated the next technique. She gathered the other two humans close and they huddled together in the incomplete shelter. Their combined body heat created a warmer microenvironment. Cooperative thermoregulation, Taman explained to the observers. Humans are social creatures. We evolved to work together for survival. Our body heat sharing is very efficient. At 30 minutes, the test officially ended. The humans had survived. But they were not done. Phase 2, Jiho announced. He stepped out of the partial shelter. We need to prove mobility. For the next hour, they demonstrated movement techniques. They jogged in place, generating body heat through exercise. They showed how humans could maintain steady movement for extended periods, even in cold conditions. This was the persistence hunting adaptation, the same trait that let ancient humans chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Professor Velthar watched all of this in silence. When the demonstration finally ended and the humans emerged from the chamber, he studied them carefully. You survived the simulation, he admitted, but the real conditions will be significantly worse. -150 degrees, not -80, and you must travel 50 kilometers. We understand the risks, Hayun said. Do you? Velthar's crystalline body shifted colors, showing agitation. You would be attempting something no species has successfully done on that planet? That is exactly why we should try, Jiho said. Sometimes it takes a different approach. Taman pulled up data on his pad. Professor, I have been studying Cryos 7's biology. Your reports say the planet is dead, but I think you are wrong. Excuse me? Velthar leaned forward. The lichens you catalogued as extinct. I do not think they are dead. I think they are dormant. That is impossible. We tested them thoroughly. You tested them from a Quintari perspective, Taman said. Your species comes from a world with stable temperatures year-round. You do not have the concept of hibernation or dormancy in your biology. But humans do. Earth has winter. Many of our plants and animals go dormant and return to life. He displayed his analysis. These lichens have chemical markers consistent with dormancy, not death. If I am correct, they could be revived. And if they can be revived, they might help us. Velthar examined the data for a long time. This would require testing. Then let us test it, Taman said. Give us samples. If I am wrong, we gain nothing. If I am right, we have a potential tool for the rescue. The council members conferred quietly. Finally, the senior representative spoke. We will allow you to test your theory. If the lichens can be revived and if you can demonstrate a viable rescue plan, we will permit the attempt. But you must convince us that you have better than 50% survival probability. Over the next 12 hours, the humans worked without rest. Taman experimented with the lichen samples. Jiho designed better cold weather gear using available materials. Hayun mapped out the route across Cryos 7's surface, studying weather patterns and thermal vent locations. When Taman finally succeeded in waking the dormant lichens, even Professor Velthar showed surprise. The small organisms began to glow faintly, generating heat through their metabolic processes. It was not much, but packed into insulated pouches, they could serve as portable heat sources. Remarkable, Velthar admitted. We studied these organisms for months and never considered this possibility. Because you do not have seasons, Taman said. Humans understand sleeping through winter and waking in spring. It is natural to us. The final planning session took place in the council chamber. The three humans presented their complete rescue plan. They would land 50 kilometers from the stranded researchers. They would travel in stages, building emergency shelters every 5 kilometers. They would use the revived lichens for supplemental heat. They would move during the warmer day cycle and shelter during the deadly night. The math is still marginal, Velthar said. So many things could go wrong. They could, Hayun agreed. But doing nothing guarantees 4 deaths. Trying gives everyone a chance. Why? Velthar asked suddenly. Why would you risk your lives for Quentari you do not even know? The 3 humans looked at each other. Jiho answered. Because it is the right thing to do. On Earth we have a concept. We call it humanity. It means acting with compassion and courage even when it is difficult, especially when it is difficult. Your species is strange, Velthar said, but his tone had changed. It held something like respect. Yes, Hayun smiled. We are, the council voted. By a narrow margin, they approved the rescue attempt. 6 hours later, the humans boarded a reinforced shuttle. Their gear was minimal. Thermal suits, basic tools, samples of the revived lichens, and emergency supplies. Nothing fancy. Nothing guaranteed. As the shuttle prepared to launch, Professor Velthar's voice came through their communication system. Humans, I still believe this is extremely dangerous. But I have never seen such determination. If you succeed, you will have taught us all something valuable. And if we fail, Jiho asked, then I will ensure the galaxy remembers that you tried, that you did not accept the limitations others placed on you. The shuttle doors closed. Hayun took a deep breath. Ready? She asked the others. Always, Taemin replied. Let us show them what humans can do, Jiho said. The shuttle launched, dropping away from the station toward the frozen white sphere of Krios 7. From orbit, the planet looked peaceful, almost beautiful, but they all knew what awaited them on that surface, cold that could kill in minutes, storms that could shred metal, terrain that had defeated every previous attempt at exploration. And somewhere out there, 4 beings waited to learn if their faith in these strange humans was justified. The shuttle touched down on Krios 7's surface with a harsh jolt. Through the viewport, Jiho could see nothing but white. White ice, white sky, white horizon blending into nothingness. The temperature reading on his display made his stomach tighten. Negative 120 degrees Celsius, and dropping as the day cycle faded. They had 18 hours of marginal daylight left. After that, the temperature would plunge to levels that could freeze exposed skin in seconds. Shuttle will maintain position here. The pilot's voice crackled through their helmets. But I cannot wait more than 72 hours. After that, my life support systems will fail. Understood, Ha-Un replied. We will be back in 48 hours or not at all. The 3 humans stepped out onto the ice. The cold hit them immediately, even through their thermal suits. Jiho felt it seep through every layer, searching for his warmth. His suit's heating elements kicked into higher mode, but he knew they had limited power. They would need to conserve energy carefully. First shelter point is 5 kilometers north, Hayun said, checking her navigation unit. We build there, rest, then continue. Professor Velthar is monitoring us from orbit. Indeed, their communication system linked them directly to the professor. His voice came through clearly. I am reading your vital signs. Heart rate's elevated, but within acceptable range. How do you feel? Cold, Taemin admitted. But manageable. They began walking. The ice beneath their feet was not smooth, but broken and jagged. Methane frost crunched with each step. The wind, even during the relatively calm day cycle, cut through like knives. Jiho found himself falling into the rhythm Hayun had taught them during training. Steady pace, controlled breathing, constant movement. Do not rush. Do not stop. Keep the body generating heat through motion. After 90 minutes, they reached the first checkpoint. Hayun immediately began unpacking the shelter materials. Jiho and Taemin helped, their gloved hands clumsy but determined. You are building a shelter from ice blocks? Velthar asked from orbit. You are using the planet's own cold as protection? The ice is colder than the air, Jiho explained as he cut blocks using a heated blade. But it does not move like wind. It does not steal heat the way moving air does. Stacked right, it becomes insulation. They worked quickly, knowing every minute outside drained their suit power. The dome structure grew block by block. It was small, barely large enough for the 3 of them, but it did not need to be fancy. Just functional. Inside the completed shelter, the temperature was still deadly cold, but the wind was blocked. They huddled together, sharing body heat. Taemin distributed packets of the revived lichens, which glowed softly and generated small amounts of warmth. 5 kilometers done, Hayun said. 45 to go. Your core temperatures are dropping, Velthar observed. Perhaps faster than anticipated. We expected this, Jiho replied. Our bodies are adapting. We will warm up with movement when we continue. They rested for an hour, eating high-calorie rations and drinking warm liquid from heated packs. Taemin spent the time analyzing the local ice samples. These formations are interesting, he said. Look at the mineral content. There is water ice mixed with methane ice. And these patterns here, these look like they were formed by heat. Heat? On this frozen rock? Haeyun raised an eyebrow. Thermal vents, Taemin said excitedly. Underground, there must be geological activity. It creates warm spots. Very warm compared to the surface temperature. He pulled up the satellite data Haeyun had studied before they left. Look, here and here. These areas show slightly higher thermal readings. If we map the vent locations, we might find a warmer path. Warmer being relative, Jiho said, like -100 instead of -150. Still an improvement, Taemin replied. He sent his findings up to Professor Velthar. The alien scientist reviewed the data carefully. I believe your biologist is correct. We mapped thermal anomalies but assumed they were measurement errors. If you follow these patterns, you could reduce your exposure to the worst cold. But it adds distance to the journey, Haeyun calculated quickly. Instead of 50 kilometers straight, it becomes closer to 65. Can you afford the extra distance? Velthar asked. Can we afford not to follow the warmer path? Haeyun countered. We take the longer route. We adjust the shelter points. We move faster when we can, they set out again, this time following Taemin's revised path. The terrain was rougher, forcing them to climb over ice ridges and navigate around frozen methane lakes. But true to the theory, the temperature readings were slightly higher. The second shelter went up faster, their hands remembering the motions. They were learning, adapting to this alien environment. On the third leg of the journey, 15 kilometers from their starting point, the storm appeared. Haeyun saw it first, a dark wall on the horizon. That is not good. Storm incoming, Velthar's voice held tension. Methane ice storm. Wind speeds over 180 kilometers per hour. You need shelter immediately. They had an hour at most. The terrain around them was flat, exposed. No natural protection. Jiho's mind raced through options. We build here, he decided. But bigger, reinforced. We make it strong enough to survive the storm. You do not have enough time, Velthar said. We have exactly the time we have, Haeyun replied. So we use it. They worked like they had never worked before. Ice blocks flew into position. Jiho designed the structure on instinct, making it low and round to deflect wind. He added extra thickness to the walls and created a double dome design, one inside the other with a gap between. Taemin gathered all the lichen packets and placed them in the inner chamber. Haeyun packed snow into the gaps between blocks, creating a seal. With 20 minutes to spare, they crawled inside and sealed the entrance with more ice blocks. The storm hit like a physical blow. The wind screamed around their shelter with a sound that seemed alive. The walls shook. Ice crystals found tiny gaps and sprayed inside like frozen needles. The temperature dropped rapidly. Shelter holding, Jiho reported. But his voice was tight. The cold was different now, deeper, more aggressive. Your core temperatures are dropping fast, Velthar said. Too fast. You must generate heat or you will not survive this. Working on it, Haeyun said through chattering teeth. They huddled even closer, pressing their bodies together. Every bit of shared warmth mattered. But it was not enough. Jiho could feel the cold creeping into his bones, slowing his thoughts. Listen to me, Haeyun said suddenly. We need to do the cold meditation now. That was theory, Taemin protested weakly. We never tested it in real conditions. We are testing it now, Haeyun replied firmly. Jiho, remember the breathing. Slow and deep. Let your body temperature drop in a controlled way. Use less energy. Become still. That sounds like dying, Jiho said. It is the opposite, Haeyun insisted. It is surviving. Humans have done this before. People trapped in avalanches, lost in blizzards. Our bodies can go into a state between normal and frozen. It keeps us alive when we should die. She guided them through it. Slow breathing. Relax muscles. Letting the cold in but not fighting it. It went against every instinct, but they trusted her. Their heart rate slowed. Their metabolism dropped. They entered a state that was almost like sleep but not quite. Aware but distant. Cold but not freezing. From orbit, Professor Velthar watched their vital signs with growing alarm. Their readings are dangerously low. They appear to be dying. But they were not dying. They were existing in a space between. A human ability born from countless ancestors who survived when they should not have. Bodies that could slow down to stretch resources. Minds that could float in half-consciousness to conserve energy. The storm raged for 8 hours. 8 hours of howling wind and deadly cold. 8 hours of existing at the edge of survival. When the storm finally passed and they emerged from their meditation, all three were disoriented and weak. But alive. Impossible, Velthar whispered. Your core temperatures reached levels that should have been fatal. Yet you are functioning. Humans are hard to kill, Haun said. Her voice was rough but determined. We learned that a long time ago. They took stock. The shelter had held. Their suits were damaged but functional. The Lycan heat packs had kept the inner temperature just high enough to prevent complete freezing. They had lost 8 hours, but they had survived. 25 kilometers down, 25 to go. But the storm had brought the deadly night cycle early. Outside their shelter, the temperature was now negative 145 degrees. The Quintari outpost reports their systems are failing faster than predicted, Velthar informed them. You have less than 12 hours to reach them. 12 hours. 25 kilometers. In temperatures that could kill exposed flesh in under a minute. Jiho looked at Haun, then at Taimin. He saw his own exhaustion reflected in their faces, but he also saw something else. Determination. The same quality that had driven humans to cross oceans on wooden boats, to climb the highest mountains, to reach for the stars themselves. Then we better move fast, he said. The next 10 kilometers were brutal. The temperature had stabilized at negative 148 degrees Celsius, cold enough that their thermal suits struggled to maintain even basic protection. Jiho could feel his energy draining with each step. They were running on determination and the last reserves of their strength. Following the thermal vent paths helped, but only slightly. The warmest spots were still colder than any natural place on Earth. They moved in silence now, saving energy, talking used breath, and breath meant heat loss. Hayun led the way, her navigation unit guiding them around ice formations and through relatively safe passages. Behind her, Taimin stumbled occasionally, catching himself. Jiho brought up the rear, constantly checking their suit readouts. All three were in the red zone for heat loss. 35 kilometers complete, Haun announced. 15 to go. The outpost has approximately 9 hours of life support remaining. Professor Velthar's voice was strained. The Quintari inside are already entering stasis to conserve resources. We will make it, Jiho said. He tried to sound confident. Your vital signs suggest otherwise, Velthar replied. All three of you are approaching critical core temperature levels. You should stop and build shelter. No time, Hayan said. We shelter now, we do not reach them in time. If you do not shelter, you may not reach them at all, Velthar argued. We keep moving, Haun insisted. They pressed forward. 5 more kilometers, then 6. The landscape became a blur of white. Jiho's thoughts felt slow, foggy. He knew this was a bad sign. His body was protecting his core by reducing blood flow to his extremities and even his brain. At the 42-kilometer mark, Hatyun collapsed. One moment she was walking ahead of them, the next she was down on the ice. Jiho and Taimin rushed to her side. Her suit display flashed red warnings. Critical system failure in the primary heating unit, Haun. Taimin shook her gently. Her eyes opened, but they were unfocused. Suit failing, she mumbled. Cold. Jiho checked the damage. The heating unit had burned out, likely from being pushed too hard for too long. Without it, she would be dead in minutes. We need to fix this, he said. His own hands were shaking, whether from cold or fear, he could not tell. There are no replacement parts, Taimin said. We did not bring spares. Then we improvise, Jiho replied. From orbit, Professor Velthar watched helplessly. You must leave her, he said quietly. Build her a shelter, leave supplies, and continue. You can retrieve her on the way back. No, Jiho and Taimin said at the same time. She will die if she continues without a functioning suit, Velthar said. She will die if we leave her, Jiho countered. We all know we are not coming back this way. We barely have the energy to reach the outpost. The return journey will be in a rescue vehicle. He started pulling equipment from his pack. The lichen packets, medical supplies, anything that generated heat. Taemin joined him, and together they created a makeshift thermal wrap around Hyun's torso and core. "This will not be enough," Velthar observed. "Then we make it enough," Taemin said. He pulled out his medical kit and prepared an injection. "This is a metabolic stimulant. It will boost her body's heat production, but it will also drain her energy faster." "Do it," Hyun whispered. "Get me up." "We keep going." Taemin injected her. Within minutes, color returned to her face. Her eyes focused. But they all knew this was temporary. A desperate measure buying desperate time. "Can you walk?" Ji-ho asked. Hyun struggled to her feet. She swayed but stayed upright. "I can walk." "Let us finish this." They moved again, but slower now. Ji-ho and Taemin flanked Ha-un, ready to catch her if she fell. Every step was a victory. Every 100 meters felt like a kilometer. "You are all reaching your limits," Velthar said. His voice had changed. There was emotion there now, something the usually analytical alien rarely showed. "I have watched many species attempt dangerous feats. I have never seen such refusal to quit." "That is human nature," Hyun said. Her voice was weak but steady. "My grandmother used to say, even if the sky falls, there is always a hole to escape through. You just have to find it, or make it yourself," Ji-ho added. Another kilometer passed, then another. The outpost appeared on the horizon, a damaged structure half buried in ice. They had made it, but the relief was short-lived. "The outpost has 2 hours of life support remaining," Velthar reported, "but I see another problem. The Quintari are in emergency stasis pods. Those pods require very specific temperature restoration to safely revive the occupants. Your arrival alone will not save them." "What do they need?" Taemin asked. "They need transport to the backup facility 5 kilometers east of your position. That facility has medical equipment that can safely bring them out of stasis. 5 more kilometers." Ji-ho felt his heart sink. They were barely standing. Hyun was running on stimulants and willpower. The idea of going another 5 kilometers seemed impossible. They entered the outpost. The interior was only slightly warmer than outside, barely above -100 degrees. The Quintari were in 4 crystalline pods, their bodies frozen in perfect stillness. Each pod weighed approximately 200 kilograms according to the display. "We cannot carry them," Taemin said. "It is not physically possible." "The outpost has a transport sled," Velthar said. "But it requires power to operate, and the power is gone." Ji-ho looked at the sled. It was designed to hover on magnetic fields, but without power, it was just a heavy platform. But it had wheels, primitive backup wheels for emergencies. "We pull it," he said. "What?" Taemin stared at him. "We load the pods on the sled and we pull it. Like a cart. 5 kilometers. "That is insane," Velthar said. 4 pods at 200 kilograms each. 800 kilograms total, plus the sled itself. You are asking 3 exhausted humans to pull nearly a ton across ice for 5 kilometers in deadly cold. "Do we have another option?" Hyun asked. She was leaning against the wall, but her eyes were clear. Silence from the professor. "Then we pull," she said. They loaded the pods carefully, securing them to the sled. Ji-ho found pulling harnesses designed for the Quintari and modified them for human bodies. They were not perfect, but they would work. As they prepared to leave, a message came through from the backup facility. It was the stranded Quintari who had been monitoring everything, their consciousness flickering in and out of stasis. "Please." The voice was weak, distorted by the failing systems. "Please do not do this. We do not want you to die for us. You have done enough. You reached us. That is more than anyone expected." Ha-un activated her comlink. "We did not come all this way to stop at the finish line. We are bringing you home." "This is suicide," the Quintari voice said. "Maybe," Ji-ho agreed, "but we have been told that several times today. We are still here." They attached the harnesses and leaned into them. The sled did not move at first. 800 kilograms plus the sled's weight, nearly a metric ton of mass. In the extreme cold with their exhausted bodies, "Pull!" Hagen shouted. They pulled, muscles screaming. The sled shifted. Then it moved. Slowly, impossibly slowly, it began to slide across the ice. "They are moving it," Professor Velthar said, and his voice was full of wonder. "By their own strength, they are moving it. Step by step, meter by meter, they hauled the sled forward. Every muscle in Ji-ho's body burned. His lungs ached with each breath of thin, frozen air. Beside him, Taemin's face was a mask of concentration and pain. Hagen was ahead, refusing to fall despite her damaged suit. This was humanity stripped to its core. Not clever technology or advanced science. Just flesh and bone and determination. Just the same qualities that had let their ancestors drag prey across African plains, that had let them cross frozen continents in search of food and shelter. After an hour, they had covered 2 kilometers. 3 left to go. You cannot maintain this pace, Velthar said. Your bodies are failing. Bodies fail when the mind gives up, Ha'un replied. Our minds have not given up, but Jiho knew the professor was right. They were reaching the absolute end of human endurance. Soon, very soon, they would have nothing left to give. The question was, would it be enough? 3 kilometers to go. Jiho could no longer feel his legs. He knew they were moving because the sled kept sliding forward, but the sensation of walking had disappeared into numbness. His world had narrowed to a simple rhythm. Lean forward, push with the legs, breathe, repeat. Beside him, Taemin stumbled but caught himself. The young biologist's face had gone pale, his lips blue despite the thermal protection. Hayan was ahead, still in the lead harness, but her steps were mechanical now. She was running on nothing but willpower. 2.5 kilometers. Professor Velthar's voice came through their comms. He had stopped arguing, stopped pleading with them to give up. Now he simply narrated their progress as if bearing witness was the only thing he could do. Your vital signs are critical. All 3 of you are experiencing hypothermia. Your hearts are struggling. Tell us something we do not know, Hayun said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Jiho's father had taught him a saying when he was young. A rolling stone gathers no moss. Keep moving forward. Do not stop. The moment you stop, the moment you rest, that is when the weight of everything catches up to you. So they did not stop. 1 foot in front of the other. Pull the sled. The 4 Quintari depending on them. The galaxy watching to see if humans were really as capable as they claimed. None of that mattered now. All that mattered was the next step. At 2 kilometers remaining, Taemin fell. His harness went slack as his knees hit the ice. Jiho and Hayun felt the sled lurch backward with the lost pulling force. Get up, Hayun said. Not cruel, just factual. We need you, Taemin tried. He got his hands under him, pushed, but his arms gave out. I cannot, he gasped. I am sorry. I cannot. Jiho unhooked his harness and moved to Taemin's side. Every movement was agony. He pulled Taemin to his feet, supporting his weight. You can, Jiho said, because we are not leaving you. So if you cannot walk, we carry you. Which means we do not reach the facility in time. Which means everyone dies. So you can walk. You just have to remember how. It was harsh, maybe too harsh. But it worked. Something in Taemin's eyes focused. He nodded slowly. A rolling stone, he mumbled. Gathers no moss, Jiho finished. My father's saying. Means keep moving. Taemin got back into his harness. They started pulling again. 1.5 kilometers, Velthar reported. The backup facility has activated its beacon. You should see it soon. They did not see it. Their vision was too blurred, too narrow, but they knew the direction. They followed the navigation markers on their displays. The sled was heavier now. Or maybe they were weaker. Probably both. The ice beneath their feet felt like it was pulling them down with every step. The cold was not just around them anymore. It was inside them, in their bones, in their blood. 1 kilometer, Velthar said. I have contacted the backup facility. They are preparing medical bays. For all of you. The Quintari medics say you will need immediate treatment when you arrive. Quintari first, Hayun managed to say. We brought them this far. They get treatment first. You are all in critical condition, Velthar argued. Quintari first, Hayun repeated firmly. That is the mission. Jiho wanted to argue, but he understood. They had made a promise. Finish what you start. At 0.5 kilometer, they could see the backup facility lights. Bright spots in the darkness like stars brought down to the ice. The sight gave them a burst of energy. One final push from bodies that had nothing left to give. They pulled harder. Faster. The facility grew larger. 300 meters. 200. Ha-Yun's legs gave out at 100 meters. She did not fall so much as simply stop working like a machine that had finally run out of fuel. She dropped to her knees, then onto her side. Her eyes were open but unfocused. High-in. Taemin tried to go to her, but Jiho stopped him. If we stop now, we do not start again, Jiho said. His voice was hoarse, raw. We get the sled to the facility. Then we come back for her. It was the hardest thing he had ever said. Every instinct screamed to help her immediately. But the cold logic that had kept them alive this long said finish the mission first. He and Taemin pulled. Just the two of them now. 100 meters felt like 100 kilometers. Their muscles had moved beyond pain into something else entirely. A state where the body no longer protested, it simply obeyed or failed. 50 meters. The facility doors were opening. Quintari medics in cold weather gear rushed out toward them. 25 meters. Jiho could see their faces, crystalline features showing concern and awe. 10 meters. Almost there. The facility doors. They crossed the threshold. Warm air hit them like a physical wave. Jiho had never felt anything so wonderful and so terrible at the same time. The warmth hurt, burning against frozen skin. Quintari medics swarmed the sled, pulling the stasis pods into the facility. Jiho and Taemin collapsed right there in the doorway, but Jiho forced words out. Haun. Outside. 100 meters. Get her. The medics responded immediately. A rescue team sprinted out into the cold. Jiho watched them go, then let darkness take him. He woke in a medical bay. The lighting was soft, the temperature comfortable. He was wrapped in thermal blankets connected to various monitoring devices. For a moment, he had no idea where he was. Welcome back, Professor Velthar's voice said. Jiho turned his head. The crystalline alien stood beside his bed along with Hayun and Taemin. His friends were also in medical beds, also wrapped in blankets, but they were awake and smiling. The Quintari? Jiho asked. All four are alive and stable, Velthar said. Thanks to you. They are recovering from stasis. They will make full recoveries. Jiho closed his eyes and felt relief wash over him. You have been unconscious for 16 hours. Velthar continued. Your core body temperatures reached levels that should have caused permanent damage or death. Yet all three of you are recovering with minimal complications. The medical team is baffled. Humans are tougher than we look, Haun said from her bed. Velthar's body shifted colors, a sign of complex emotions. I was wrong, he said simply. When I told you humans could not survive the ice planet without shelter, I was profoundly wrong. We had shelter, Taemin said. We had each other. More than that, Velthar said. I have been studying your species since you departed for Cryo 7. I have reviewed your evolutionary history, your biological adaptations, your cultural practices. I understand now what I missed. He moved to a display screen and pulled up data. You come from a world of extremes. Your planet has ice caps and deserts, mountains and oceans, seasons that shift from deadly heat to deadly cold. Most species in the galaxy evolved on stable worlds. We adapted to one set of conditions and built technology to expand beyond them. But humans, he continued, humans adapted to adaptation itself. Your biology is not specialized for one environment. It is specialized for change, for enduring, for finding ways to survive when survival should be impossible. Jiho thought about his ancestors, people who crossed continents on foot, who sailed oceans in wooden boats, who climbed mountains just to see what was on the other side. Not because they had superior strength or speed, but because they refused to accept limits. I will be presenting a paper to the Galactic Science Council, Velthar said, about human capabilities and the need to reevaluate our assumptions about environmental tolerance. More than that, I will be recommending that humans be given priority consideration for extreme environment operations. What does that mean? Hayun asked. It means the galaxy needs to understand what I learned, that humans are not fragile, that your greatest strength is not physical but mental, the determination to keep moving forward, the refusal to give up, the ability to adapt to anything. Over the following days, as the three humans recovered, the story of their rescue mission spread throughout the Galactic Academy Station and beyond. Students from dozens of species came to see the humans who had done the impossible. The Quintari survivors, once fully recovered, visited them personally. We are alive because you refused to accept what everyone said was true, one of them said. You refused to let us die. Our species will not forget this debt. 2 weeks later, Jiho, Hayun, and Taemin stood in the council chamber. The Galactic Council had called a special session. They were presenting the three humans with the Star of Valor, an award rarely given to any species and never before to humans. But more importantly, they announced the approval of humanity's first independent ice planet colony on Cryo 7. The three rescuers were named as lead colonists if they chose to accept. Will you return to the planet that nearly killed you? A council member asked. The three humans looked at each other and smiled. Of course, Jiho said. We have work to do. 3 months later, a human colony ship descended toward Krios 7. Jiho stood in the observation deck watching the ice planet grow larger. This time they brought proper equipment, more people, better preparation, but he knew the real reason they would succeed had nothing to do with equipment. It was the same reason they had survived the rescue mission. Human determination, human adaptability, the refusal to accept that something was impossible just because no one had done it before. Hyun joined him at the window. Nervous? No, Jiho said honestly. We already proved we can survive here. Now we just have to prove we can live here. We will, Hyun said confidently, because that is what humans do. We find a way.